Hey guys, thanks for going on this nerd journey with me. If you want your episodes ad-free, go to makemeanerd.com/join and hit that button.
Hooked on you, baby, you're golden. Time moves, I never noticed. Just can't get enough. Got me wonderstruck.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Make Me a Nerd. I'm Mandy Kaplan, a mainstream mom whose mission it is to explore the world of nerd culture I've been missing out on and afraid of my whole life. If you're new here, this is what goes down. I bring some noob energy and questions, and I bring on a wonderful guest who is a passionate nerd, and they bring their energy and their expertise, and we try to figure out why this thing matters. And this thing today is Wonder Man. So I, of course, have made my name Wonder Mandy because I cannot resist.
Very fair.
It's probably the only reason I agreed to watch Wonder Man. So I could make Wonder Mandy puns.
Okay.
And you all probably recognize the voice of my incredible returning guest. They are the host of Superhero Ethics. They are the host of Star Wars Generations.
Correct.
I got it right?
You did. Well done.
They are a new dad. They are an incredible person and somebody I frequently get to podcast with. Welcome back, Matthew Fox.
Thank you so much. And I have to admit, and this is what we'll talk about, I feel like this week I am cheating because, as you say, normally you get to be the noob and we're talking about a show that is super geeky and that I will be able to help inform you about. But part of why I love Wonder Man is I think this time I am the noob because this is a show that is first and foremost about a struggling actor working in Hollywood. He happens to have a superpower and exist in a world where Captain America and the Hulk exist. But part of why I love the show is that's not what the show is about. The show is about going to auditions and being an actor. And Mandy, I think that's more your world than mine.
Oh, it hits so close to home.
I'm sure.
Oh, God. So how did you come to Wonder Man? And I already have a question because you mentioned Hulk and Superman, or no, Hulk and who'd you say?
I think it's Captain America.
But they're not in this. There are no other superheroes in this unless I missed them.
There very much are not. There are other, it is set in the MCU, the Marvel Universe, and there are other characters who have been introduced in other things.
Those are a lot of my questions.
Right.
Because I feel like I was missing out.
Right. Okay. So just I'll hit that first. Travis Slattery, who is kind of the best friend of our main character, Wonder Man, who's not called that yet, but that's the character he's going to become in theory eventually.
Simon Williams.
AKA,
yes.
Trevor Slattery is known to fans of the MCU because he is an actor who in Iron Man 3 was hired to pretend to be this faux terrorist called the Mandarin.
So that's real.
Yeah.
Or that's pre-existing because to me, it was just brand new for Wonder Man D.
Yes. No. Well,
yes.
And I think, honestly, that's part of why this show is so good. And I want to hear what you thought of it. But I've certainly heard from a lot of people who don't like superheroes, don't like comic books, don't like the MCU, knew none of this stuff going in and still thought it was a great show.
You just described me. Well, one of my questions is, do diehard MCU superhero lovers like this show? Or by episode 3 or 4, were they like, where are my cool special effects and all of my fights? Mm-hmm. This is about a struggling actor.
So I think it's mixed. I think for the most part, people really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. There are definitely those people who are like, well, I want my superheroes. I want big fight scenes. Why don't we get that? There's also, of course, some part of it who are, I just don't like a black man being the star of a show.
Oh, boy.
And a lot of them are hiding behind that first one. But I think even among...
Well, they can go fuck themselves.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But my sense is, and granted, like I haven't asked everybody, but from the polls I've seen and the online...
You haven't asked all the racists.
I've tried.
Smattering.
They want to tell me whether I ask or not. But no, from asking just Marvel fans and talking to Marvel fans I know and interacting online, the terms superhero fatigue and comic book fatigue were definitely ones that were being thrown around a lot. And I think part of it was that, especially Marvel, it was felt like there was kind of a template, a format that their shows were falling into that everyone was getting kind of bored of. And that one of them was, you set up someone in kind of this interesting situation and they have the moment of, well, I have these powers and I could stop my interesting situation and go become a hero, or I could not. And every time they decide to become a hero, and every time that means the big villain shows up, and then there's an episode of getting ready to fight and getting my costume and getting my wart, all of this stuff. And then there's a big fight scene that's probably very CGI'd. And then we have an epilogue where I'm sad that I can't go do my other thing, but I'm okay being a superhero, and we ride off into the sunset. And I kept waiting for that shoe to drop with this show. And forgive me for spoilers, it simply never does.
Right. This is all about spoilers. If you have not watched all 8 episodes of Wonder Man, please pause.
Yeah.
Go do that and come back. Thank you.
It's maybe, the episodes are about 25 to 30 minutes. I think we did it. We watched all 8 episodes in 4 hours. It was a very easy kind of binge. So
now, have you watched one time, or when you threatened me that if you didn't get to come on my podcast and talk about Wonder Man, you would never speak to me again? Duly noted. But no, did you rewatch for this?
I did, because I watched it originally to talk about it on my own podcast. Hopefully there'll be a link to that episode.
Superhero Ethics, yes.
With 2 awesome guests who do a Marvel podcast. And then my spouse was really interested in watching it. So a couple weeks later, also knowing that I had this podcast coming up, she and I watched it together.
So you've watched it twice?
That's correct, yeah.
If you did not have to podcast about it, is this something you would rewatch?
I expect I will watch it at least 2 more times before the year is over.
Let's break down that psychology, because I just simply don't do that. And
Sure.
I don't necessarily understand it, but that is part of the nerd mentality. I love it. I want to watch it again and again and again and see what I missed, or come at it from a different angle, or I read an article and now I have to go back and watch it again. Does that describe you in general?
So, yes and no. I think the purely watching it to have a reason to watch it, that is not me. There are some things that I it used to be sure, but in the last 10 years, we've had such an explosion of content. It feels like there's always something new to watch. And there are times where I want a comfort show or I want something on in the background, but it's rarely going to be one of these Marvel shows. But when I say I'm going to watch it again, there's 2 reasons why I will often rewatch something. One is that I love introducing someone else to something that I love, and getting to not only watch it again with them, but therefore to kind of also see it through their eyes and talk to them about it. And there's a number of people in my life who I think I would love to do that with. Part of being polyamorous, it's a fun part. You have lots more people to cuddle up and watch things with. The other thing, though, is that I don't know all the details, and Marvel has been a lot more up in the air in this than they used to be. But although this character does not want to become a hero, a number of the plot things that are introduced in this show are, I think, going to become relevant for upcoming Marvel stuff. And I'm definitely a person who will say, oh, is 10 minutes of that 4-hour show going to be relevant for this thing that I might want to watch coming out next week? Yeah. Could I find those 10 minutes and watch it? Sure. Would I rather just use it as an excuse to watch all 4 hours? Hell yes. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I admire that. That's dedication. I am way too lazy.
That's fair.
And too scattered. I will find that 10 minutes.
Yeah.
If that, or I'll fake it.
Yeah.
When I watch the next thing. But I love that dedication and just that joyful, almost childlike, I want to watch it again. You know, it's wonderful. Specifically about Wonder Man, I, of course, did thorough research. And by that, I mean, I went on Wikipedia for about a minute.
Yeah, sure. That's enough.
What I saw is not what I was watching.
Yeah.
I was watching a very real, gritty, no costumed guy. And Wonder Man can you explain who Wonder Man prior to this show was in the MCU?
So he had never been in the MCU before. He had been in Marvel Comics. This is the first time he's appeared.
MCU is what? Only the movies.
So the MCU is the on-screen universe.
Okay.
So it's TV, it's movies. I think there are some comic books that have been written specifically for it, but it's the
Okay.
the world that started with Iron Man, with the Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. So yeah, it's all of that kind of world.
Okay.
But from what I know, and again, I did an episode with 2 comic experts, and you have your Make Me a Geek. I have basically my Make Me a Comics Nerd with those guys. Same exact thing. They did what you would do. I did what you would do. As they explained it, he was very much a kind of zany, off-the-wall character who would rarely get his own comic strip, but would often sort of show up in other people's comic books. And as far as I know, as far as I understand, this show didn't come about because they were like, oh, we've always loved that character. Let's tell that character's story. I felt like instead there was a feeling of, we want to tell a whole different kind of story, but we don't want to create a completely new character. So let's find a character who's basically a blank canvas, because
that's the vehicle.
And that's the vehicle. And
yes,
my sense is, and I don't know for sure, but there's 2 factors that I think really go into this show being made. One is, as I said, the comic fatigue, the superhero fatigue, and people weren't quiet about that. There was a lot of discussion of, we're getting bored of the same format, and we want something new. We want something different. We want something that's not fights based. But also at the same time, a number of other shows, The Boys, I think being the best example, but a number of others, have started to more and more ask the question of, well, if superheroes are just a part of the world and everyone knows they exist, how is that going to change the world? And like The Boys talks about how the Olympics would be totally different because the limits of who's the fastest person is
right.
It's all going to be superpowered people.
Right.
And I think this show was kind of basically saying, okay, let's play with that. And let's say, what would happen in Hollywood? And I think they answer that question in a kind of a cynical but fairly legitimate way of the idea of people using powers in Hollywood to be better actors, better stunt people, or whatever, would be pretty awesome right up until the point something goes wrong. Right. At which point the insurance agencies, who probably have a lot more power than any of us want to admit, would come in and say, that's a huge liability. You just can't do that anymore.
Right. Well, of course, you come at it from the global ramification of it, or how would it affect all of Hollywood? And I approached it as somebody wanted to tell the story of Simon Williams. And in the pilot, the whole thing starts with Simon Williams, played magnificently by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. Simon Williams bombs an audition because he's overthinking, and then he tries out for the lead in Wonder Man, and then he meets a fellow actor, Trevor Slattery, Ben Kingsley, and Trevor helps him audition, and they strike up a friendship. But what this episode was to me was this down on his luck guy who just self-sabotages. He has a part on, I forget what.
It's some made-up show that they create.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. It's a real show. Oh, crap. I can't think of what it was. But he gets fired because he's like, can I call the writer in and question why my character with 2 lines would, and it's like, get out of here, you.
Yeah.
And the way they are portraying Simon Williams and a lot of these actor characters is painfully real to me.
I'm sure.
I don't do much acting anymore, but as an actor and being in this world that I am in, but they did it with respect and it was realistic, and it reminded me of one of my mainstream things. Have you ever listened to Smartless?
No.
The podcast with Will Arnett, Jason Bateman, and Sean Hayes. And the reason I stopped listening is because they were so goddamn out of touch, and they would make fun of out of work actors.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you going to get your headshots redone, Sean? You're going to go to the Valley and sit at an audition? And they were mocking it all the time. And I just thought, just because you all got very lucky,
right?
Why are you mocking it? This show doesn't do that. And Simon is maddening. I mean, you just want to throttle him or give him tons of therapy. But you're rooting for him, and his world is very real.
Yeah.
So I come at it based on like seeing it through Simon's eyes, and you're coming at it seeing it through the world's eyes?
Well, I think it's both. And I think it's that, and that's part of why, again, I wanted to really to have I'm going to make you a nerd, but you're going to make me a struggling actor. I mean, in that,
God forbid.
because I do think that's such a great perspective. And you're right. It's I can talk about it in those things, but what makes the show is that you care about Simon and you're rooting for him. And that he's not it's one thing to root for a person who is just so clearly so talented, but just cruel, evil Hollywood won't look at him. That's too easy. Making him be self-sabotage, because that whole time, it felt so meta in that moment, because yes, he's auditioning. He's on some somewhat paranormal, he's supposed to get his head bitten off. So it's clearly something, it's not Law and Order. It's more X-Files, whatever the show was. But clearly it's still supposed to be something, kind of for the mainstream. But think about what us nerds do. Us nerds will watch a show where a character has 2 lines and we will go so deep into the lore and we want to know all of it. And so to me, when it started, I was so excited that the actor cared about all that, and then had the realization of, oh, but he's not supposed to, because he's just driving everyone crazy. The writer doesn't care about that. The director doesn't care about that, because he's going to say 2 lines.
They want to make their day.
Yeah. And he's going to say 2 lines and then have his head bitten off by the big monster lady. That's what matters. And so I felt like that was almost kind of a meta joke, but then also you're right. You care about him so much. And then skipping ahead somewhat, when we get to the struggle that I've always said that a character I love is one where science fiction is saying he has a problem I could never imagine, but the problem looks a lot like a problem I can't imagine. And, an actor who has a superpower that they have to keep hidden in order to get a job, well, that, I don't know anything about that. But I have friends who 20 years ago had to keep hidden the fact that they were gay, who had to keep hidden the fact that they were actually not white, but they were white passing. I think that story of an actor who has a secret and who will only make it big if people understand he is that, if he should have passed in some way or another, is a story I think lots of us can relate to. And, and the way that they did the superpower story, that was so clearly a metaphor for that. And not just in Hollywood, in any kind of, job or work or relationship situation, it was just chef's kiss. That to me was such a great way of making the character, making his struggle my struggle and everyone's struggle.
Yeah. And I mean, I understood the metaphor, but hearing you phrase it that way, immediately I want to cry. And this is your superpower is coming on my podcast and making me cry every time, I think, without fail. After this, we're going to move on to episode 2, self-tape. So in episode 2, Trevor's recruitment as Simon's spy comes to light, which was confusing to me. But this actor, Trevor Slattery, played by Ben Kingsley, has been taken in. So I wrote, Agent Cleary looks familiar. Does he exist in other MCU movies? Yeah. And is this the same bureau from Legion? I was all confused as to who this bureau was that's hunting anybody with superpowers, right?
Where you've seen that guy before is, did you see Ms. Marvel?
No.
Okay. So in that show, I think he may have appeared in 1 or 2 other movies as well. But in that, we're introduced to this group called Damage Control, which is a government agency that is kind of sort of sketchy and pretty problematic. But its job is basically to protect the rest of the country and maybe the world from superheroes, and thus try to, register them and just make sure that we know about them and all these kind of things that sound perfectly fine, but are actually terrifying and are based on an idea that we can classify an entire group of people by its most dangerous members. This doesn't sound familiar to Americans and me in Minnesota at all. But so that's what that group is. And that's where he comes from. Okay. And then Trevor Slattery, just give some more background. As I said, he was acting as though he was this terrorist, basically to help an actual terrorist, though, do the terrible things he was doing. He didn't really know that, but the federal government still kind of looked at him pretty badly. He went off and kind of had his own adventures, because it turned out that this character, the Mandarin that he was pretending to be, is a real person. And so in the movie Shang-Chi, he gets kidnapped and has kind of
Oh,
these
okay.
crazy adventures off in this mystical land of I think it's Kunlun, or it might be a different place, but it's definitely a place that is like not on this earth. So he's had all this kind of weird, crazy adventures. He's now come back to the real world. He's come back to California and found out that the law is still remembering, oh, you were connected to those terrorist attacks. We want to chat with you. And so that's why they have this power over him.
They recruit him.
Right. And I think he has as much as a character journey in this as Simon. And for me, the real
he's so beautiful.
It's
a beautiful performance because he's on assignment trying to spy on Simon.
Right.
And it's tearing him up because he genuinely falls for Simon.
And I think
there's a genuine love between them.
I think there is. And I don't think it's romantic. I don't think it needs to be.
No.
It's a definite, but it's a love. It's a brotherhood. And for me, the key in that second episode, though, is that when they recruit him, they do this big speech about say, well, you could go to prison or you could do this terrible. And he's like, I do that other thing. And so like he starts from a place of, I don't care who else I hurt as long as I keep myself out of prison. And that makes his eventual story where he literally volunteers to go to prison to protect him just so much more powerful.
Because after his initial, I don't care who I hurt, I'll do whatever it takes, pretty immediately, everything he does is motivated by his not wanting to hurt Simon.
Yeah.
By trying to protect Simon, by trying to help Simon get parts, by trying to, help him heal his relationships with his family. I mean, Trevor just cares. He sees himself in Simon and he cares for him deeply. And it's really beautiful. And shout out to my episode on the Goonies where I admitted that I had a weird crush on Joey Pantoliano. Jeez Louise. Joey Pants. Let's call him that.
Uh-huh.
When I saw Goonies and as a kid, Joey Pants, I thought he was cute. And then he popped up on episode 2 of Wonder Man.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all like a
connected.
Make Me a Nerd.
All coming together.
MCU situation. He was very funny. I wanted more of him.
Mm-hmm.
Did I get my wish? Keep listening.
We'll have to find out.
You'll have to find out. But yeah, so this is where we get to know Trevor's backstory. And then they do a couple of episodes. There's Pacoima, which is going back to Simon's childhood home and his mom's birthday party. And Trevor worms his way in there. It's one of those episodes that you could pull out.
Yeah.
There wasn't a ton of link to the overarching story.
Right.
But it was a beautiful episode because I fell for this family.
Yeah.
I wanted in that party, that food, that warmth, that energy. I absolutely fell for Simon's family. And it made me frustrated with Simon even more.
And I think that episode is exactly the kind of thing that so often we don't see in MCU projects because there is that sense of we've got to get to the plot. We've got to tell you about the villain. We've got to tell you about the problem. And people, I think, often are very frustrated that there isn't enough, that there isn't a willingness to say, you know what, we're going to take a full episode and just not care about any of that stuff. We're just going to character build. Because at the end of the day, like I was talking to someone about it, there really isn't much of a plot to the show. Like it's a guy's having trouble getting parts. A guy gets a part. Something threatens his ability to get that part. His friend steps in and takes the fall for him. The guy gets the part. And the guy at the end helps out the friend who took the fall for him. That's it. You do that in a 20-minute episode. Simple. It's a character study. It's a character study of these two men at this difficult time in their lives.
Yes. And then episode 4 called Doorman. And, I often make note of the blurb about the episode for my listeners and for me to refresh. So this is the blurb from this episode, if it helps everybody. Ding dong. That's all they wrote.
That's all we got.
That was the whole episode description, but it makes sense once you watch it. Anybody out there, Matthew, I don't imagine you were a Days of Our Lives fan through the early 90s.
I know what you're kind of going for is that I wasn't a soap opera person. So I'm just going to say I grew up in a Dallas household. You want to ask me about the adventures of JR and Bobby Ewing and the dream sequence, the dream season and all that, I'm with you. But we were not a daytime soaps family.
Well, this episode starts at a club, or when it flashes to the club, and we get to know Damar. His boss is played by Charlotte Ross, who was legendary on Days of Our Lives through the late 80s and 90s. And she still looks 30 years old. It was anybody who's a Days of Our Lives or Duel for us insiders, really exciting to see her. And she was very good on the episode. She didn't have a ton to do. And then Josh Gad enters the bar and the episode with a vengeance. He was fantastic. He was mocking himself to an extreme. And this episode is a total departure from Simon, Trevor, Story, Wonder Man. Gone.
Nothing to do with any of it. It's so brilliant.
Like when the Golden Girls had a neighbor played by Rita Moreno and her husband was Paul Dooley and they were having some marital troubles. We were in their house and the Golden Girls were gone. And I think it's back in that day, it was like, oh, they're trying to make a spinoff starring Rita Moreno and Paul Dooley, and it didn't go. That was my take. But yeah, this was a complete departure into Damar the doorman, and his superpower is that you can go through him.
Right.
And therefore, you can go through a door or a wall or whatever.
Right. And
that's his superpower.
Part of there's two things that I really loved about this. One is, and it's just a production choice, but it's so brilliant. 99% of the episode is black and white. And part of it's because, we've heard reference to the doorman clause in terms of why is it that you can't have a superpowered person working in Hollywood? And they talk about the doorman clause. And so pretty early on in this episode, we realize we're getting the backstory of that thing that no one has any idea of what they're talking about. And also, I just want to talk about the Josh Gadness of it all, because one of the shows that I really enjoyed when I was younger, that I still really enjoy on some level, though it has not aged well. There's a lot of homophobia. There's a lot of misogyny, but is the show Entourage. And part of why I know it is because one of the stars, Adrian Grenier, I was actually a friend of his and in a theater class with him when we were kids. So if I hadn't lost touch with him, I could have been the part of the actor's entourage. But in the show, one of the best parts of it is that it's one of those like Life in Hollywood shows. And a lot of Hollywood people play themselves and often play parodies of themselves. And so Bob Saget is this prostitute obsessed neighbor of his at one point. And, James Woods is this just like ridiculously angry person who is so furious about how many tickets he gets for the premiere of the movie that he's starring in.
Doesn't feel so exaggerated.
Well,
go ahead.
Fair. In truth, there is art. But so seeing Josh Gad, as you said, playing a parody of himself, but that's again like living into the stereotypes into the bad press he gets. It's not made up entirely, but I'm sure it's much worse in this than
Josh Gad gets bad press.
I think that like I don't know much, but I think my sense is that like this is the sort of like take the little things someone's ever said about Josh Gad and blow it up to 1,000 kind of stuff.
I respectfully disagree. I've never heard a negative thing. And I think this was his way of saying my reputation can handle playing myself as a total douche because everybody knows he's not.
That makes sense too. Yeah.
That's my interpretation of it. The movie Josh Gad is making is brilliantly called Cash Grab.
Yes.
And it's a quote, heist movie. But calling it Cash Grab is so self-aware and so meta, and I love it.
If you search MCU and the words cash grab, you will find that exact phrase used to describe an awful lot of the Marvel properties that have come along.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. Good to know.
It is so meta.
Do you know that they did a social media campaign? I was on Facebook promoting my cabaret, and there were headlines: Josh Gad, actor, missing.
Oh, I didn't see that. That's so good.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Is it, oh my God. And then obviously 2 seconds in, they're like, this is not real. This is, to get your attention, clickbait. but that added to the whole meta, layer upon layer.
Right.
It was just really fun and clever that he goes missing in the movie, and I liked it a lot.
I joked to my spouse when I was watching it with her that because the MCU does love to bring in things that were set up in one project much later in another project, and as you said, Josh Gad disappears and never reappears. And I know something about theatrical conventions. I looked at her and said, "Do you realize we now have Chekhov's Josh Gad?" Because you can't have him disappear in one thing, and he has to. Sometime he will appear, and I'd be like, "Look,
yeah,
it was Chekhov's Josh Gad. There he is."
Brilliant. And I get the reference. I'm proud of myself. But that's my kind of nerdery.
There you go.
This episode was all about how the world got so excited about Damar, the doorman. And he got his own show, and he got brand deals, and he became a megastar because he could literally let people walk through him. It was very cool. And then pretty quickly, society turns. Well, he's just a one-trick pony. Is that all he does? I'm sick of the doorman. And they want to move on to the next big thing. And of course, he squanders. Is that the right word? He doesn't handle his money well. He doesn't handle the fame well. He's got a gross agent, quote unquote, helping him, but not really. And it's so on the nose for how we are as a society these days about influencers and 15 minutes of fame and even scandal.
Yeah.
You can just ride out a scandal if you get in trouble.
Yeah. I mean,
sometimes you can become president and stay president despite scandal.
Right. Didn't VH1 or one of those shows had a whole where are they now thing that was often about these one hit wonders or people who had one big thing that made them famous, and then people got bored of it, and then 20 years later, where's Vanilla Ice now? He's doing weird reality shows. Where is
Home Reno?
Yeah, where are these people who did someone became famous because they did this thing, and then 20 years later, or even say now 6 months later, what are they doing?
Right. And it's so gross because it's you admired this. You wanted more of this. Right. And then you got more of it, and then you got bored and turned on it.
Right.
And what is wrong with us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's to me, it felt very much like an it is both it's written by people who feel like they have been Simon and they have been Trevor. And so it is both sort of it is lovingly sending up Simon, and it's scathingly sending up the industry that he's trying to break into.
There, in the first episode, they joked about actors pretending to be agents to get auditions. That is absolutely real, and my friends did it.
Really?
Oh my God. Absolutely real. I'll call the casting office for you, and I'll claim that I'm your manager, and then you'll call for me an hour later.
Yeah.
And then we'll both get an appointment. And it's like they did it on Friends, and people probably thought, well, who's dumb enough to just blindly accept, oh, you're Lucinda from the Smith office? Sure, come on, send your actor in. But we used to do it. And I actually never did it because it made me feel icky, and I'm not a good liar. My voice gets really high, and I start talking really different when I try to lie. So if you ever hear that, Matthew, you'll know.
Mm-hmm. Good to know. Good to know.
She's lying. You know who never lies? Pete Wright. No, he's not a liar. He is just the producer of Make Me a Nerd. And this show is a production of True Story FM. He's the engineer. He is peerless. I love him and appreciate him. My theme song is Wonderstruck by Jane and the Boy. Don't know them, but I love and appreciate them. And if you would all be so kind as to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, that does a lot of good to help other people find the podcast. Write a review, comment, question, make suggestions. I will give you a shout out on a future episode. And if you're feeling extra supportive, please go to makemeanerd.com/join. Hitting that button will get you your episodes ad-free and early, and my eternal gratitude. Episode 5, Found Footage. Simon's caught on camera. I'm doing this to refresh my memory. Using superpowers. Right. while defending Trevor from drug dealers. Blackmailed by the videographer, who's a kid, he's forced to raid an illegal chamois candy operation. Comedy erupts when the duo infiltrates the home-based business. Not my favorite episode.
I think I would agree with you. And I think it's because it's the closest to being a traditional superhero episode. And again, they put in, like, the focus is still, if it's in any kind of genre of action adventure, it's buddy cop. And buddy cop is not often what we get in the MCU because it's a little more self-aware, it's a little more self-mocking. And I think in the overall story, we needed a chance for Simon to explore, can he use his powers for good? And also, what are the consequences of using his powers? You know, that the whole point is that he got caught and now he risks losing this chance. Because one of the setting up ideas of this is that as a kid, he went to see these incredibly cheesy movies about a character called Wonder Man with his father. And so when Wonder Man is getting made, it's just he really wants to play this part. It's everything he's always wanted. He somehow managed to actually do halfway decent in the auditions, although the whole audition process is nutso, and that's something we can discuss. Because again, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. But yeah, and that's at risk. And so I think it does a helpful part of the story. But yeah, it does feel the weakest. And I think part of it's because they're trying to, this is the action adventure part, and it's not part of the character study.
And they take the focus off of Simon and Trevor and put it on Jaden, the blackmailer, and Esteban, the candy maker. And I don't care about those people.
Yeah.
I care about Simon and Trevor.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I care about Simon potentially getting the job that's going to make or break his career, or getting discovered by damage control and taken off the streets and, you know, tortured and experiments done on him for the rest of his days, or whatever they're planning on doing. I don't know. But I will say that Trevor has a line that made me cackle. This is the most inside baseball I will get on Make Me a Nerd. Somebody comes over to him and says, "You don't remember me?" And Trevor says, "Did we do a play together? Was it Hurly Burly?" And the bad guy says, "No." And he goes, "American Buffalo?" And if you went to school, when I went to school, those were two very popular, cool, zeitgeisty plays that everyone was doing scenes from Hurly Burly or American Buffalo in the 90s, when Trevor would have been, you know, doing off Broadway or off West End or whatever. It was so, that joke 30, 40 years ago wouldn't have read like a joke to me. It would have been like, right, he's done Hurly Burly and American Buffalo. Good for him. And in this day and age, it made me laugh. So that's for all my theater nerds out there. I love the reference.
Well, and I love that because, like, to me, I love a joke that is a deep cut for those who get it, but still works for everyone else. Because to me, I thought it was possible they were real plays. I also thought it was possible because Trevor's really, really good at bullshit. Like, that's a part of what makes him do it. And his ability to make up out of thin air two things that sound ridiculous, but also sound like they could be the names of plays, as a way of kind of testing, like, is this person going to go, "Oh yeah, I was in Hurly Burly with you. That's where I know you." And Trevor now knows this guy's full of shit because I just made up Hurly Burly. So,
the joke works on another level. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead.
But he said Hurly Burly, the guy clearly is a menacing figure.
Right.
And he's like, "No." So rather than Trevor saying, "Oh shit, I'm in trouble," he says, "American Buffalo."
Yeah, he just goes deeper on it.
It's like, it's like a third way the joke works.
It's so good. Now, is that the episode that has the second part of the audition in the director's house, or does that come later?
That's episode 6, the callback.
Okay, we'll get to that then.
Yeah, well, I think we're there.
Okay.
Because the whole, like, drug bust, but they're really only making candy, and then the cops and everybody likes the candy, it just didn't do it for me.
You'll notice I left that out of the plot description because it's pretty irrelevant to all of it. It's pretty forgettable.
Yeah. But then they go to Von Kovac. That is the quote-unquote legendary movie director who is directing the Wonder Man movie. They go to his big palatial home for a callback, and it's Simon and Trevor. And then when they arrive, they realize there's 3 guys up for Wonder Man and 3 guys up for Barnaby, these 2 characters. And this feels utterly real. I gotta tell you.
Okay.
Yes, you get in situations as an actor where they're like, we're going to do some improvising, throw the script away. Everybody get on the floor and pretend you're being birthed again. That was like freshman year of voice and movement.
Oh my God.
Hopefully this will deter my son from wanting to major in this. But yeah, actors do some weird, self-important shit.
Right.
And I could see an actor being like, come to my home and I'm going to make you uncomfortable and see what makes you tick. Yes,
Right.
that feels totally real.
It definitely had that sort of feeling of like, this is so zany and over the top, but also like maybe some believability to it. So I love that it rang true like that, because it just, it was perfect. And it was, and especially because like Simon is clearly so uncomfortable and the director is pushing them so hard to be like, I want you to take risks. I want you to do something crazy. And so Simon goes there and he really does something crazy. And the director's like, what were you doing? I didn't want that. And it's just like, you just get how frustrating it must be to be in that environment, you know, where like you're supposed to be crazy, but you're supposed to go completely off script, exactly along the lines of the script that the director has in his head that he won't tell you about.
Which is just the unfair nature of all of it.
Yeah.
But he gets put in an improv situation and immediately starts this pretty emotional speech. And 3 words in, mainstream mom alert, I was like, oh, this is Pretty Woman. Oh, he's doing Pretty Woman. And he was.
Yeah.
And it was a fun nod. But it also let us know that Simon is not the kind of guy who can go to an emotional place like that just on a whim because some director demanded it of him. So his brain just went to like pull a monologue that you know from something.
Right.
Don't really let yourself go there. And is that because he's afraid he'll lose control? And as he ends up doing he falls asleep and we don't know that. And he punches some guy through the face, which was an amazing special effect. It ended up being like paper mache when he punched through or something like that.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. But I wonder why Simon's safety net or his comfort zone was like, I'll just quote this and I hope no one knows.
Yeah.
Instead of actually going to an emotionally raw place with an improv.
Right. Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. And I realized actually I was remembering it that he did something at least that was kind of crazy, but you're right. It's I guess it makes more sense that the director's like, come on, I expected more from you. Cause yeah, and I think it's again, it's a really powerful narrative. It's a really powerful metaphor there of, you know, for most people, the idea of just let yourself go, let yourself, you know, let go. And just do whatever makes sense. And it might be very hard, might be very embarrassing. But, you know, for folks who like, hey, if I let myself really have one crazy night, it means I'm going to take up my first drink in 20 years, or I'm going to let my anger go and I hurt someone, or, you know, something like that, where it's, you know, there are folks who are really struggling to be in control of things that aren't the best if they're not in control. And yeah, it just works so powerfully.
Yep. And I was disappointed that Joey Pants wasn't one of the Barnabys called back. I thought for sure when they arrived and they were like, oh, join the rest in the living room. I was like, oh, I know he's going to be there.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't. And I was a little disappointed.
I mean, you know, maybe he's just so busy being the reminder to women of the crush they had 30 years ago that I admit I have no clue who you're talking about, you know, but he's busy doing that role that he couldn't come back for a second episode.
Well, on the show, he talks about real estate. And I love that he's like, I'm the best actor in the world. I can do whatever I want, but you got to get into real estate because real estate is where it's at. It's just a fun, self-deprecating, fun plot point that I really enjoyed. Then we are on to episode 7, Kathy Friedman, played by Lauren Weedman. So the guys they've gotten the roles of Wonder Man and Barnaby.
Right.
They're going to be on set and they're going to be interviewed. And they are hilariously nervous. Simon is hilariously nervous because he knows he's going to say something awful, and he does. this episode started with a flashback of his dad taking him to see Wonder Man when his dad was alive and Simon was a little kid. It was gut-wrenching. I actually wish we had seen it earlier in the series. More of dad and more of Simon as a kid. We saw a little bit, but I really like seeing him as a kid. And then they hard cut to Simon acting like a kid in his trailer. He's in this beautiful trailer and he's like, oh, he's all amped up because he got Wonder Man and here he is on set. It was a really lovely bit of storytelling there. Actual 10-year-old Simon to 35-year-old Simon acting like a 10-year-old.
And there again, I think is, most of us are never going to get to play our childhood hero on the screen. We might get to pretend to be them, at Halloween or for our kids or something like that. But I do think there is something really magical that a lot of people feel about a character you loved when you were 10 years old, just going to see that character on the big screen for the first time. I think that's part of why these things matter so much and why, unfortunately, I think sometimes people get too into their feels and angry if it's not what they think it should be. And that's obviously a whole problem that we've talked about in other episodes, but still there is this sense of childlike wonder and magic. And that can be about sports. It can be about tasting food that your mother made for you when you were 10. It could be any of those things. It transports you back to that childlike feeling, and seeing Simon getting to feel that was just magical and beautiful. And it made it so upsetting that therefore that kind of like letting go that he gets to have finally is what, is matched by people coming after him for it.
Well, he's his own worst enemy because he's already acting like a douche on set. Just say thank you, Simon, but he doesn't. Somebody gets him a smoothie and he's like, oh yeah. Right? He's not appreciative and he's a very frustrating character to me.
So why do you still like him?
I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah.
A lot of it I think is the actor.
Yeah.
I just think he draws you in and he makes you care and makes you root for him.
I think that's very true. I think for me, part of it is that, and again, I don't mean to keep harping on the idea of like this guy with a secret, but it feels like he is someone who is always passing, who is always having to be, I'm trying to be what other people think I am in this way that like, happens with race, with sexuality, with all these things. And for him with a superpower. And so I guess I took those scenes a little bit as not, okay, now he thinks he's a big shot. And so he's acting like a jerk, but now he's a big shot and he thinks he's supposed to act like a big shot. And what he's seen is, and that doesn't excuse it because that still means like, oh, you think therefore that we're supposed to do is these things that hurt other people, like have some more empathy. But it feels to me like what he's doing there is I've been the lowly actor on a stage or a sound stage or whatever with the really big hot shots, and I've seen them be jerks. So I guess that's what I'm supposed to do now.
It's the same mentality that I think of when I think of rushing or pledging a fraternity.
Yeah.
And you get abused and you're miserable and it's criminal what I hear about in hazing. And then you turn around and do it to the next pledge class. And I don't understand that. I've never understood that. It drives me crazy, different subject. But I would get to sophomore year and be like, hey, we're not going to do hazing anymore.
Yeah.
We can make them clean the house and do embarrassing, funny things. Great. But, oh my God, I don't understand wanting to turn around and treat others like that.
We talk about Stockholm syndrome and like there's discussions about whether it is an actual psychological thing that happens in the very specific, like you've been captured by criminals, you turn into a criminal. Mm-hmm. But I think in the more kind of like pop culture sense, the general idea of you're abused and treated in terrible ways in a situation that you're supposed to feel good about, and nostalgia and your memory will take over enough so that when you survive it, A, you feel proud for surviving it. B, you don't want to remember just how horrible it is because you're supposed to feel good about the family member or the fraternity member or the boss who put you through it. And so now you're like, oh yeah, it's not so bad. And so you can do it to others because your empathy, you kind of like block your empathy by telling yourself it's not so bad.
Right.
And then even
And you
like
survived it.
20 or 30 years later, you can be like, it's not a big deal. You know,
Right.
I'm like, I don't know the details, but I know that a video of some fraternity hazing recently went online, and a lot of people are chiming in and be like, oh, I went through this 30 years ago. They're fine. People are just
Right.
so weak today.
No,
And
right.
it's the same thing. You know, it's exactly what you're talking about.
Yep. And this is the worst thing I'll ever say. We are nearly out of time, which is crazy.
Okay.
Because we are at the last episode, and it is the most superhero-y one, because now Trevor has sacrificed himself and claimed he blew up the building. A building blows up on the soundstage because Simon loses control.
Right.
And that's what happens. And Trevor takes the fall, goes to jail, and Simon goes and busts him out. And it is all action-packed, and there's chicanery because Simon has to pretend he's studying for a role to get into the jail. I really loved this episode. I love that they started the whole series with Midnight Cowboy, a screening, and then they ended with the song from Midnight Cowboy.
Yep.
It was a satisfying journey beginning to end. I'm sorry that I have to rush through the last episode.
Well, no, and I'll just hit a couple quick things. One, just the fact that Damage Control is worried that this guy might be a danger. And in their attempts to harass him and prove if he's a danger, they are 100% what pushes him over the edge to make him a danger. So I think that's very important. And, you know, again, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop and for him to have this, okay, I can't be an actor, I have to be a hero. He's not. Like, part of the hero is you're selfless and like you go after the people who are most in danger. In their world, as in our world, a former terrorist assistant who wasn't really meaning to be a terrorist, but was, and is now in jail for helping out his friend, is not the highest person on my list of who needs to be broken out of jail to like bring justice to the world.
Right.
But he's Simon's friend.
Right.
Simon is deciding.
No, it's personal. It's a personal story. It's not about greater good. It's about my friend.
He's not becoming a selfless hero, and I don't want him to be. He's saying, this guy took a fall for me, so I'm going to help him. And we're going to walk off happily into the sunset together because I made a great movie alongside, you know, someone else who annoys me, but we're just making it work.
And who replaces Trevor Slattery when he gets thrown in jail? Joey Pants. He's back.
Oh, that's Joey Pants. Okay, now I get it. Now I get it.
Yes.
Okay.
So that was also satisfying. Matthew, I'm sorry that I have to race through this. It is always so wonderful to have you here. Tell the people where they can hear you.
TheEthicalPanda.com. There you'll find Superhero Ethics, which Mandy has been a guest on, as is the estimable Pete Wright. Star Wars Generations, where we're getting ready for the new mall show that's coming out. We're going to have a lot of fun with. And a podcast that Pete runs that I'm just a guest on, but the Marvel Movie Minute. Right now we're doing 5 minutes at a time of Captain America Winter Soldier, which is a movie about Americans realizing that their government is slowly being taken over by fascists who want to hunt people down because they have the wrong ideas. And so it's fun to live in a fantasy world that has no connection to our own.
If you dig this conversation, I've done other MCU episodes. I did Agatha all the way. I did Captain America, the original one, and Thunderbolts, all on the Make Me a Nerd in the library. Go back and listen to past MCU episodes, and you can hear Matthew Fox's past episodes. Matthew Fox is the one that got me addicted to the Penguin. That happened.
Oh, that show is so good.
And we did Orville, which I loved, and we did Last of Us, which I couldn't handle. Okay.
And I know that once again, Mandy is playing the part of someone who is not quite as much of a nerd as she actually is. I'm sure that she actually knows that the show is called Agatha all along, but I'm sure that she said Agatha.
What did I say? All the way?
Yeah. So,
of course.
I'm happy.
No, that is
I know it's
genuine.
I know it's what you really meant. So
I'm adorable. All right. Thank you all for listening. Matthew Fox, thank you for joining me. Until next time.
May the force be with you.